Hello, welcome back. This is part 7 on UV mapping. And what do we have left? We have all of our flags. So let's go ahead and just kind of break all this apart. So we got a cylindrical mapping here. We got spherical mapping there. And we've got probably two maps we want to use for these. These, I suppose the poles can be duplicated. So let's just do one. And we have 1, 2, 3 different flags, so it should be pretty quick. So we're going to click on the cylinder, and we're going to go to UV, and we're going to go to cylindrical mapping, and we're going to click on project. Okay, I'm going to go to UV, UV editor. There we go. And let's just go ahead and scale this down. Okay. Now we do not need to follow the textile density on these. Okay. So there's no need to follow textile density on these. So I can get these to be placed within. So this is the rod, I guess you want to call it. And I need to make sure that with the checkerboard on there, it's hard to see the checkerboard on here. I can't see it. So I'm going to go ahead and scale that up to the pole, because this pole is so long. There we go. Okay. Kind of get that, scale it down a little bit like that. Just kind of get those squares even. That's what matters, I think. Okay, and we're going to scale that down because that's got to fit within the texture space, right? Yep. Let's scale that wider. Okay, and let's move it. Okay, there's the pole. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to do the sphere. So I'm going to click off the map, and this is already mapped good. It's well mapped, so we're fine with that. So I just need to get them. If you have a hard time seeing both of those, then you're going to have to go into object mode and shift select the top of the flagpole and go ahead and combine it. So hold down the space bar and go to mesh combine. So we need the flagpole to be the same. We're going to go to UV shell, and I think everything's set up. Let's take a look at how the cubes look. The squares look. Okay, let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Smaller. There we go. Kind of match the textile density the closest we can. Okay. Just double checking on all this stuff. There we go, and we got this guy right here. So that's about right. That's about the right scale, I think. If I move that around, might be a little bit too small. Let's see. Something like that would work, probably. Okay, there we go. So my UV shell is done. I know it looks like a lot of wasted space, but that's okay. It's all right. Not going to hurt anything. All right, so there is our flagpole. Okay, UV mapped. And so you need to be in object mode. You need to go into UV snapshot, browse. This is going to be number 10. Number 10, UV mapping. And click apply and close. And then we're going to go to file, export selection, OBJ. And this is going to be number 10. There we go. And there's the flagpole. Okay, so we're going to close that. Next thing we're going to do is go to object mode, hit the Q key, and we're going to do that flag. And this flag should be facing, it is facing Z. So we are going to do a planar mapping facing Z. So UV, planar mapping, facing Z, and then project. And then we're going to go to UV editor. Ooh, look at that. And then we're going to click on the checkerboard, and we're gonna go ahead and hit the R key and right click over UV shell. And when you click on this, you can scale it down to where we have squares. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So something like that would work. Scale it down a little bit more so we have nice squares in there. And then I'm going to scale the whole thing down. There we go. So you get the idea. So we want perfect squares if you can, so there won't be any stretching. Okay. Right. That's good. Turn that off. Make sure it's fitting within the UV space. Go into object mode. Make sure this is on object mode. And go to UV snapshot. And this will be 11. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 11. Save it. Apply and close. Go to File. Export selection. OBJ export. And this will be 11, which is the flag. You need to write it down. Feel free to. I'm going to close this. We're done with that. And then we're going to go to the next flag, which is, this is another flag. And this will be exactly the same thing. UV, planar mapping. It's facing the Z-axis, so I'll project it. Go to UV editor. Click on the texture, the checkerboard texture, and kind of zoom in on this so you can see. And I'm going to hit the R key over the UV editor and just make it smaller and longer or bigger like this. And then smaller. And until I get a nice perfect squares. And that looks pretty close. I'm going to turn off the checkerboard and position that within the UV texture editor. Okay. And that looks good. So I'm going to right click, go into selection mode, go into object mode. Whoops, I don't know what happened there. That's kind of weird. So we're in object mode, and I'm going to go to UV snapshot. Same old thing. This one's going to be called 12. Okay, and save. There we go. Apply and close. This will be, we're going to save that out as an OBJ. Export selection. OBJ export. This will be 12. And then we close that. We go to the next object, and this is this guy right here, and this is facing the same direction. So I'm going to go to UV, planar mapping, option box. It's facing the Z-axis. Click on project. Go to UV editor, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to move it so I can see it. Click on checkerboard and this mapping, and zoom in a little bit to this to see what's going on. Now, the way it is right now wouldn't be distorted too much, but just a little bit in long ways. So I'm going to hit the R key and just kind of scale that up until we see perfect cubes, and then I'm going to scale it down to fit in within the UV texture map. Okay, I need a little bit more. Something like that looks pretty, looks like the squares look like squares. Okay, turn off the checkerboard, and there it is. And we're going to go ahead and click on object mode, and we're going to go ahead and UV snapshot this, browse. This will be 13. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. 13. Save it, and apply and close. There we go. And then we're going to go to File, Export Selection, OBJ, and this will be number 13. Okay. All right, so now we got 13 objects. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So everything is all ready to go. Oh, we forgot one thing. Actually, a couple of things here. I forgot the drawbridge. So we need to do that. So we got one more, I guess. And this will be UV mapped as a automatic mapping. So I'm going to go to UV automatic map. Go to UV editor. The only problem is that we have scale that's still embedded into the object, because when we scaled it, but the thing is it didn't see the scale set up. It just remembers that it was a cube before we squashed it and elongated it. So we're going to close that up. We're going to try this again. So I'm going to go to object mode, and we're going to delete by type history, center pivot, delete by type history, and freeze transformations. And the freeze transformations gets rid of the scale. So now when we do UV mapping to do automatic map, we can go to UV editor. It sees the proportion of the rectangle. Okay. I'm not really worried about textile density, again, because it is separated from the castle. It's not going to be really part of that castle. It's going to have its own texture. So I'm not too worried about textile density. But what I am worried about is that these pieces are really close together, and they're kind of going outside of the UV space. And if they're not, they're just so close, and I don't want to do this. I'm going to just kind of move them apart. So I'm going to go to UV shell and click off. Try this again. I don't know what is wrong with this thing. There we go. UV shell, select this UV shell, just move it away from the other one. And do it for the rest of these. Just give it a little room, a little space. There we go. And that's the best way to go. Give it a little space. Okay, so that is done. Let's go to selection mode, make sure it's in object mode, and we can go to UV snapshot. And we can go in here, and this will be number 14. 14 things, wow. That's a lot. So we click on save and apply and close. And then I'm going to go to File, Export Selection, and OBJ, Export Selection. So we've got number 14. There we go. Apply and export. That's good. Okay. Well, and you can do your chain. Let me see here. Oh, we got to do the ground plane. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Center pivot, delete history, and freeze transformations. And then we can go into UV editor. Oh, excuse me, we want to do planar mapping. So we're going to go click on the option box and go to y-axis because it's looking down, and project it. And we're going to go to UV editor, and we're just going to scale it down just a smidgen like that. And right click and go to selection mode. Okay, that turns green. UV snapshot that. And we are going to do this as 15. 15. Okay. And apply and close. And then here we can go to File, Export Selection. And this will be our ground. Okay, ground. There we go. Export Selection. Close that off. All right. Now we do have like a chain or something in here, if I remember right. There it is. Your chain. Okay. That is going to be tough to do. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'll go ahead and show you that you can do it very quickly by going to UV and doing automatic mapping. And when you go to UV editor, you can see it's got all kinds of pieces on here, and that's fine. That's okay. It's going to be such a small part of the texture. We don't need to do a lot with that. We do need to scale it down just a smidgen because it looks like it's touching the sides, even though it's probably not. But very close together. Let's go ahead and scale that just a smidgen like that, just to keep it away from the edges. Okay. And then we're going to go back in here to object mode, select it as an object, and then go ahead and save it out. Okay, as 16. There we go. 16. Apply and close, and of course this will have to be exported out. File, export selection, and we're going to go to number 16. Okay. Export selection. Close that up, and we are completely finished, okay, with the modular pieces. Now we need to go into Substance Painter and do the fun part, which is texturing. Okay, I'll see you in that 3 or 4 part series, probably more than that, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'll see you in the next video.